And showtime, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the ChannelPro 5-Minute Roundup. A look at news, trends, and tips for the SMB channel in 5 minutes or thereabouts. My name is Rich Freeman. I am executive editor of the ChannelPro Network. I am also a co-host of this program. I am joined this and every week by your other co-host, Eric Simpson, a business improvement and transformation consultant to MSPs and other IT providers. Eric, how you doing this week?
Doing great, Rich. Doing great. Getting stuff done. Looking forward to closing, Q4 strong. I can't believe it's already almost Q4. Where has the year gone without us traveling?
You know, I'm right there with you. And what strikes me is we're just days away, or I guess a little over a week away from Labor Day. It's like it's the end of the summer. How did that happen?
Crazy.
Well, let's plunge into our top story of the week here. And you know what? In a lot of weeks, this story might not even really have made it to a big place, a prominent place on the ChannelPro radar. It involves the launch of a new company. They don't have a tremendous track record. We don't know very much about what they offer and whether or not it's something that people need to be embracing. But this is a story that we're going to be talking about in large measure because it is both strategically a very interesting niche that they're looking to fill, and also primarily because of the people who created this company. So for those of you like Eric Simpson, whose contact with or history with managed services goes all the way back to the very earliest days of managed services as we know them today, they're going to remember a company called Enable, which was one of the big names in RMM software way back when. Along with Kaseya and Level Platforms. And then on the PSA side, you had ConnectWise and Autotask. Well, in 2013, SolarWinds bought Enable, and the CEO of Enable at the time, Gavin Garbutt, kind of took his money and went off to do some other things. Quite honestly, I have lost track of him since then. Haven't really had any contact. I doubt he even remembers that we used to talk relatively frequently back in the day. Well, now we know what he's up to, at least now. He and Derek Belair, who was a very senior executive, sort of his right-hand man at Enable back in the day, they have launched a new company. It is called Augment. It has 2 T's at the end if you want to look it up. And basically, from their perspective, they're trying to do now for MSPs what they were doing for MSPs 15 plus years ago with RMM software, traditional RMM software. That software was designed to position an MSP to remotely manage physical infrastructure like endpoints and network devices and that kind of a thing. Now what they're looking to do is create a very similar kind of tool or collection of tools that MSPs can use to manage cloud-based solutions, specifically software as a service applications. So I would not be surprised if down the road they add the ability to do cloud-based infrastructure as well. So right now, out of the gate, they have 2 products available immediately. One is called Discover, and you can use it to go out and do an inventory of all of a customer's cloud-based solutions. That includes both the products that they know they're using and have officially approved the use of, like say Microsoft 365, and all of those shadow IT tools out there that, especially in a work from home environment, their end users are probably quietly using at home, Dropbox or what have you. So you get that big picture view of everything going on at the company in the cloud so that you can secure it, keep track of it. There's a second product available right now called Optimize, which focuses in on that officially sanctioned set of products provided by the company, and it gives you the big picture view of those systems, helps you understand who's using them, how much use you're getting from them, what you're paying so that you can optimize costs and so on. And then in November, the third, and I think really kind of foundational piece of the portfolio as it's going to exist in the early days of Augment, that's scheduled to arrive in November, and that one's going to be called Manage, and that's really the sort of cloud RMM piece of this story. So, the interesting thing, Eric, is they had the idea for all of this way back in 2013 when they sold Enable to SolarWinds, if not earlier than that. They already knew that MSPs and the entire IT industry were headed towards the cloud and that there would be a need for tools that could do for MSPs with those cloud applications what the physical infrastructure RMM tools were already doing. And, you know, a big part of why they created this company is they looked around, they just didn't feel anyone was doing that in the way that they felt that it should be done. So interesting to see what Gavin and Derek are up to, and interesting to see the specific place in the industry where they felt like they could make an impact.
Yeah, Rich. You know, one word that comes to mind from the strategic focus of what Gavin and Derek are doing right now is finally. Finally, I mean, we get an organization that is going to help us manage, monitor, patch, and report on all of the cloud platforms that we as MSPs and cloud providers have been moving these workloads, you know, from on-premise to these cloud destinations for so long. And, you know, what's interesting, Rich, as we were talking before, you know, we started recording, you know, there's the big players, right? We've got AWS, we've got Microsoft, we might have some Google stuff that, you know, folks are managing and getting into, you know, helping report on usage and things like that to manage utilization and costs and things like that. But what about all the other 97,000 platforms that everyone's using, right? Who's addressing those? So, you know, great. This is, I think, a great strategic um, focus for Augment. And, you know, I've got to believe that, you said, hey, it's been 2013, sold to SolarWinds. Maybe there's some alignment with some expirations of non-competes that have maybe helped accelerate the launch at this point in time, or certainly shortly, you know, leading up to that. So, you know, this is a great, another bite of the apple for Gavin and Derek. And, you know, another thing that I found interesting from the article that you wrote was the fact that they didn't go the traditional route that we see a lot of these startup companies go and try to go out and build rounds from investors and things like that. This is kind of essentially something that they've self-funded with themselves and maybe some friends and family to get this thing kicked off, right?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, most of the funding came right out of their pockets. Recently, in roughly the June timeframe, they went out to some friends and former colleagues, and they raised about $1.5 million from those folks. But yeah, really, this is something that they've kind of bootstrapped themselves. There, as far as I'm aware and have been told, there's no venture capital funding involved in this startup, and which is interesting because it is a relatively, you know, for a company that is brand new, this is a relatively robust offering. They've already got 2 products, with a third coming in a few months. They've got this service that they call Augment Assist, which sort of provides consulting assistance with things like, you know, especially difficult migrations or getting a cloud operations center set up. They've got a whole freemium offer that we can get into, but we don't really have time. I mean, this doesn't feel like the toe in the water kind of, we're just opening the doors. They've really got a lot of stuff going on here, and it is impressive that that they were able to fund that themselves.
Well, you know, we know not their first rodeo, so I don't think they had a lot of, you know, figuring out the framework of what they wanted to do. It was just moving that focus from something that they'd already done with on-premise devices and endpoints and services and things like that, and just shifting that focus to the cloud, which is kind of the next evolution of where we're going, right? So as things become more, you know, app based, and you know, unanchored from desktops, you know, this is what's going to drive the next generations of businesses, right? As we move away from these, you know, fat client applications on desktops and things like that. And we're seeing that shift, you know, from big players like Microsoft and others, where they're, you know, even Windows now, you know, will become an app at some point that can be run on a number of devices, you know, right along with all of the other Office productivity suites. So I think it's a very strategic move. I think it's very prescient, and I think it will help accelerate, you know, the adoption and create more service opportunities and revenue opportunities for MSPs.
All right. Well, let's take a look at your tip of the week here. And Eric, we spoke recently on the 5 Minute Roundup about how, as a managed service provider grows, you got to make sure that everybody on the team sort of understands their role and the importance of their role. Your tip of the week this week might actually be relevant in that context as well, which is really just making sure everybody has the big picture understanding of the company's relationship with the customer.
Absolutely, Rich. And again, this is, real stuff that we deal with every single day as business owners, MSPs, et cetera. Today's tip of the week came from a conversation I had recently with a client, one of their team members, and they're on the service side, and they were sharing with me how challenging it is to accelerate um, transformational change when disparate business units of the organization and maybe even individuals don't really understand the entire relationship with an existing client and what that life cycle journey of a client is. So here's a great short example. So you know in the best case scenario, we would love to have the entire life cycle uh, process of a client kind of mapped out so that everyone can see it and understands that workflow and how all of the staff in an organization interacts with that client from time to time, from the time that the sales professional gets engaged and begins that sales process and that journey with the client to when they sit down with their internal sales engineer and project manager to help properly scope, price, and set the expectation of what the solution will deliver to that client, to when they present that to the client, to then when the client closes and has the kickoff meeting with the project manager, because after all, onboarding is a project. So someone's in charge of that, making sure that that kickoff meeting, everything is understood and any expectations that need to be reset are reset at that point, moving through ongoing management and maintenance of the infrastructure, and then projects that come along. How does everyone that engages with that client um, treat each one of those interactions? And when we're opening tickets, here's an example where a technician, hey, it's 15 minutes to closing time. Am I going to work on that ticket or not? Right. So when everyone understands the relationship between all of these clients and who they are and how every interaction and appreciates how every interaction builds a perception of satisfaction or dissatisfaction, I think it really helps the organization come together and have more communication and more care around the handling of that client relationship through all of these different points in the journey.
Yeah, no, I mean that it makes complete sense. Basically, if somebody at the company is operating in a silo, if they don't really have that larger picture of the relationship with the company, it becomes very easy to lose sight of how your work ties into this person's work and that person's work, and the communication piece on that I think is critical. If you do know what all of those touch points look like and why they're all important and where yours fits into that entire life cycle, you might understand situations where something comes up that you actually need to call out to somebody else because it's relevant to what they do, it's relevant to the next thing that's going to happen in the life cycle, et cetera. Whereas if all you know is what you're doing, your little specific piece of the puzzle, none of that will resonate with you.
You're spot on, Rich, and that's such an important point to make. Is that when someone along that series of touches, feels that there's an issue or a problem or the client's dissatisfied, sometimes if we're not in tune with how important that relationship is, and passing that information on to someone that can reach back out to that client to address it immediately, we tend to erode the trust and confidence of clients, and they tend to feel like we really don't care about them as much as we used to, and that's what defines a true um, valuable relationship with a client versus a transactional kind of a vendor relationship. And we all know the positives of maintaining and nurturing those other relationships. I mean, it impacts things from getting more work approved and more projects, all the way to referrals and testimonials and things like that. So, the worst time to find out when when a client is dissatisfied, when you feel everything's going great because you haven't heard, they're quiet, and all of a sudden they reach out and say, "Hey, would you mind sending us over our administrative passwords, please?" Something's up. It's almost too late to save that relationship at that point because they're shopping.
All right. Well, that leaves us with time for just one more story this week. It comes to us from Vietnam, in fact, the Mekong Delta region of Vietnam. Now, there are a lot of us here out in the world who maybe haven't gotten as many haircuts as they did in the past. Certainly, probably earlier in the year. I'm going to guess you waited a while between haircuts because you either couldn't get into a barbershop or you were afraid to go there or what have you. And you may have been wondering what happens if I just keep growing the hair. How far can this go? We now have the answer here from Vietnam, because the world learned about a 92-year-old gentleman there who has not cut, washed, or combed his hair in 80 years. And if you want to know what happens to hair if it has not been cut in 80 years, it gets to be 5 meters long. And we'll just Americanize that and round it out just a little bit. Call that 5 yards. 5 yards of hair, Eric. This is what happens if you don't get a haircut.
Yeah, man. And on top of that, kind of a Rip Van Stinkle story, I think. Not washing or combing for 80 years. Man, yeah, that's a record I've heard of the folks that let their fingernails grow, right? So this is a new one.
It is also our last story of the week, folks. All the time we have this week for you on the 5-Minute Roundup. We're going to be back again next week with another episode, though. If you like the show, you want to take a look at some past episodes you haven't gotten a chance to take a look at, keep up with the new ones as they become available. The thing to do is go to the ChannelPro channel on YouTube and subscribe to that. Make sure you click that little bell icon if you want to get the notifications when the new episodes go up. You want to read more about Augment, a very interesting company from the former folks who ran Enable, or just get all sorts of other industry news and business growth advice for your company, go to channelpronetwork.com every day, because we have got great new content for you there every day. To learn more about Eric and the work he does with his clients, your destination should be ericksimpson.com. That is ERICK Simpson.com. So that's it for this week, folks. We're going to be back again with you next week with another episode of the 5-Minute Roundup. Until then, please enjoy the rest of your week. Eric and I are enjoying the rest of your week already.